Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. As the healthcare debate heats up again in Washington, one of the most powerful Democrats came to Austin and signaled willingness to make a deal. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi toured the new Dale Seton Teaching Hospital along with Austin Congressman Lloyd Doggett. It comes as GOP leaders in Washington consider options to revive the plan to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Part of the plan could let states get waivers to rules that require health insurance to cover a list of essential benefits.
It was a bad idea before, and now they've made it worse by saying essential is now optional.
Under the current health care law, essential benefits cover things like prescription drugs, lab work, maternity care, and mental health services. One GOP proposal would give individual states waivers if they can show they could lower costs or give more people coverage. Democrats oppose that idea, but Pelosi says if Republicans drop their effort to repeal the current law, she's ready to make a deal.
Once he takes repeal off the table, we can talk. We know how we can make some accommodations.
But taking repeal off the table is not in the plan for many Republicans, including those in the Texas Senate. They passed a resolution by Senator Buckingham, which calls for an immediate repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Senator Buckingham joins us now. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So once the act has taken effect, the rate of uninsured has actually gone down in Texas. So what's wrong with that?
Well, what we see is, or what I can tell you from my personal experience, I lost my insurance through Obamacare. Most of the people who gained insurance gained it through Medicaid expansion, which Texas, of course, did not participate in. You know, I think the status quo is unacceptable, and it's time to move forward to a program that'll be more patient-centered and help folks.
As a doctor, you yourself, what do you see with your patients as the solution to giving people more coverage?
Well, what I see is a lot of people with insurance cards, but they can't access their care because of the narrow networks, because they have to travel so far, because of the huge deductibles that they can't afford. So what we've learned is that an insurance card does not equal care, and we need to get back to a patient-centered program that'll actually let them get the care they need.
I know our crew interviewed you when you went to Washington, D.C. earlier this spring, and you met with President Trump. What did he tell you about everything that's going on with healthcare in the nation, and what was your message to him?
Sure, my message to him is kind of the same that was in Senate Resolution 1. Let's get it repealed. We want to see forward progress. The status quo is not okay. I think in his heart he genuinely wants to get it repealed, and I'm excited that they're working towards that goal.
So switching gears, you have another bill that has been talked about this week, something with drivers here in Texas that addresses road construction. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. You know, what we've seen through my district and the I-35 construction is that it has almost killed some of our towns. Salado has been especially hard hit, lots of businesses closing. We want everyone to come visit Salado, but the point of the bill is to help them get some of those funds that TxDOT already collects from the contractors when they overrun their projects, but that money wasn't necessarily going to the communities that were affected. So we're trying to be sure that money gets to the communities that need it.
I've driven that way. I had to go up to Oklahoma for Easter weekend. It can be a lot of wait time.
Yes, lots of times the road were closed for really terrible wrecks. It was a mess for a long time.
All right. So as a freshman senator, you've been here for a while. We talked to you back, in studio right before the session started. What have you learned along the way? And, if you decide to go for another round, what do you want to do differently next time?
Well, I've been really blessed with a really great team. We hit the ground running. I had served as a Sunset Commissioner as a public member, so I had served in a legislative body. So we've learned a lot along the way, lots of rules and lots of parliamentary procedures. But I think we're really doing great. We're making our stamp on Texas, and we just want to continue to make Texas even better.
Is there anything you've decided you want to try to tackle after the session?
Well, as soon as the session ends, we're looking towards the next session and what are the bills that we need to be thinking about and what research do we want to start so that we really have a thoughtful approach.
And you'll head back to your practice, right?
Yes, we'll get back in the office more consistently starting in June.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. Have fun in the last couple of weeks of the session.
Well, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Governor Abbott breaks his silence over the controversial bathroom bill. His words come as a new version of the bill gains momentum in the Texas House. A girl's death reveals a troubling situation in the state's foster care system and what's happening to children who can't find a home. The The number of Texas foster children sleeping in state offices and other alternate sites doubled last month. Numbers from the Department of Family and Protective Services shows 65 foster children slept at least 2 consecutive nights in a state office, motel, or shelter last month. That's more than double the number from February. Earlier this month, a teenage girl died after she ran away from a state office building where she was living because CPS did not have a foster home available for her. 15-year-old Daphne Jackson died after being hit by a van. Lawmakers are working on legislation to help the CPS crisis. Senate Bill 11 is now in the Texas House. It would create a system to better track children at risk of dangerous situations in their homes. This proposal also requires children to get a medical exam within 3 days of entering the foster care system. We told you last week how the big decisions on how to spend your tax dollars will be made by a group of 10 Texas lawmakers. Now we know who those people are. 5 members of the Budget Conference Committee come from the House. Appropriations Chair John Zerwas leads the team, joined by Larry Gonzalez from Round Rock, Sarah Davis, and Trent Ashby. Oscar Longoria is the only House Democrat on the committee. They'll work with Senate Republicans Jane Nelson, Joan Huffman, and 2 Central Texans, Lois Kolkhorst from Brenham and Charles Schwertner from Georgetown. Chuy Hinojosa is the only Senate Democrat. Committee members will go through the budget line by line to resolve differences between the House and Senate versions. Both the full Senate and the House have to pass the same budget. Do women lawmakers make different or even better decisions than men in the legislature? Our guests on this week's Roundtable have a unique perspective on those issues. First, a new version of the bathroom bill gains momentum in the Texas House. It comes as Governor Abbott breaks his silence over the controversial topic. Before scores of Texans voiced opposition to another bathroom bill working its way through the legislature, the governor broke his silence on the issue. Plus, the state is one step closer to setting statewide rules for ride-hailing companies. Alana Rocha with our coverage partner, the Texas Tribune, has details from under the dome.
Some lawmakers again turn their focus in the legislature to a bill that would spell out who can use what bathroom where. Even the governor weighed in this week. That's where we start this edition of your Texas Political Roundup, in the bathroom. Ahead of a hearing on House Bill 2899, which would invalidate local trans-inclusive bathroom policies in cities and school districts, Governor Greg Abbott broke his silence on the issue. He called the bill a thoughtful proposal and said he wants to see some version of a bathroom bill get to his desk to be signed into law. Wednesday's hearing on HB 2899 went well into the wee hours, with several transgender Texans and city leaders voicing opposition to the measure that was left pending in committee. House Republicans have tried to get the bathroom bill language into unrelated pieces of legislation. This week, they slapped a gender-defining amendment onto a bill that would regulate companies like Uber and Lyft. House Bill 100 would create a statewide framework for ride-hailing companies, requiring they get an annual permit to operate and subject drivers to yearly background checks. Now the bill also defines gender as the physical condition of being male or female. The state's top liquor regulators know how to party, letting both taxpayers and members of the industry they oversee pick up the tab. This week it cost the executive director of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission her job. Sherry Cook retired from her post after a Texas Tribune investigation uncovered a list of spending controversies. Cook admitted during a brutal hearing at the Capitol that staffers misused state resources by creating a now infamous flyer depicting the top brass guzzling Lone Star beer while jet-setting to a national conference. The reporting also led lawmakers to file measures that would cut off future out-of-state travel by TABC. I'm Alana Rocha. A school finance bill that would invest another $1.6 billion into public education and simplify the formula the state uses to fund schools advances in the legislature. That story and what it means for your kids is online now at texastribune.org.
For Perspective, we're joined by Brandy Grissom and Lauren McGaughy from the Dallas Morning News. What is your take on the governor's stance on the bathroom bill now?
Well, it's sort of like, finally. I mean, we waited months for him to sort of weigh in on it for a long time. He was really kind of wishy-washy. He said we would, initially he said we'd wait and to see what the Trump administration does regarding bathroom rules coming down from the federal government. And then he sort of was silent on the issue for a really long time. So it makes a difference that he took that step this week and came out and said that he wants to sign a bill that that regulates the use of bathrooms. I think it's still to be seen whether it'll make it through, that legislation will make it through the House, where it's still not entirely popular, and because there is so much opposition from the business community to it.
What's the importance of the timing for that? I mean, is it just all about getting this legislation forward, or is it about other, pieces of legislation that he might want cooperation on?
We don't know that, but it seems to be that's probably what's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of push and pull in these final days about priorities, and if someone got something in exchange for allowing this bill to be debated, that would be totally run-of-the-mill, happens all the time. Brandy's totally right, though, that everything is changed. This changes everything. Abbott's support for a bathroom bill of some kind makes it much, much more likely that Texas becomes the second state in the nation to have a law like that.
So another big thing that happened at the Capitol this week was the ride-hailing legislation. Kind of does away with what Austin has already had in place as far as its own regulations. Do you see other other cities in the state kind of having concerns with this as well?
I think what we're seeing here is something else that the governor has talked about, which is him really wanting to do away with a patchwork of ordinances regarding different local issues. The bathroom issue is one of those that was spurred by local ordinances having to do with who can use which restroom. And ride hailing is similar. We're seeing that now legislators want a statewide sort of rule about how these ride hailing services could work. So I think what you're going to see is concerns statewide from cities about how much control they have over making laws that affect their residents.
And school finance was also a big one this week. It's gotten through the House. What's it going to do in the Senate?
To be seen. Probably doesn't have a great chance over there. The education priorities of the two chambers are pretty different this year. So vouchers doesn't seem to have much of a shot, if any, in the House, which is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's priority. And the school finance bill, which passed in the House, might not have that much of a chance in the Senate. So, if they want to swap those issues, maybe everyone could be a little happy, a little unhappy. That probably is not going to happen this session. We haven't seen a whole lot of compromise yet, but we still have a few weeks left, so anything is possible.
5 to be exact.
5 weeks, not that we're counting, but
What are you going to talk about after that? No, legislation aside, something you had talked about in one of your articles this week was the investigative presence with the state, and how some of the positions that are supposed to be looking into the things that might be going wrong with our government and our state have been held up during Governor Abbott's administration so far. Tell me kind of what sparked this, and what kind of reaction has your reporting had?
So we got a tip, one of my colleagues back in Dallas at the morning news office there got a tip that that investigations were going uncompleted because of the hiring freeze that Governor Abbott instituted back in January. And so what we did was we asked for waivers that have been granted to different state agencies so that they could hire people despite the waivers, or despite the hiring freeze. And what we found was that there were dozens of positions all across the state, particularly investigative positions, that the agencies had told the governor, look, if we don't hire someone to fill this role, then we're putting public safety at risk. Some of those positions included investigators at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality who look into air and water quality. One agency that still has not received permission to hire despite the hiring freeze is the Texas Board of Nursing. They're looking for 3 investigators whose job it is to oversee nurses and make sure that complaints regarding carelessness or incompetence or malfeasance are investigated. And because of the hiring freeze, they haven't gotten permission yet to hire those workers.
And after you guys started asking questions, you kind of noticed that maybe some of the there were some changes, I guess. Some positions got filled, right?
That's true. After we asked for this information, about 30 of the positions that had been open for months got filled. Whether that was because of us asking questions or maybe an issue of timing, we can't be certain, but
it was you. No, that's great watchdog journalism. Do not mess with Brandy Grissom, right? Speaking of projects that you two have been involved in. Tell me all about what she said.
Well, What She Said is our weekly Facebook Live show that the ladies in the Austin Bureau of the Dallas Morning News have been doing this legislative session, and it highlights female lawmakers, of which there are fewer and fewer, at least in the Texas House, and we really wanted to put a spotlight on what it's like to be a woman in a legislature dominated by men, how they got to that position, what the difficulties are, and how to get more women involved in politics. It's been really enjoyable and kind of like an icebreaker for us in a lot of ways with some lawmakers that might have a little bit of cold feet about the media these days. It's been fun to have them on and kind of just chat, sit on a couch and kind of kick our heels off and just just chat.
So do women make better lawmakers? Is that it?
That's the consensus. Actually, one of the themes that has come across as we've talked to, I guess, 14 different legislators now, has been just sort of not necessarily that women are better, although maybe in some ways they are, but that they're different and they bring a different perspective to the Capitol than men do. They carry a different load, a different role at home, and that transitions through to their work life as well. So they understand the roles that women play and the needs that women have, whether they're working moms or they're stay-at-home moms sending their kids to schools. And they also understand sort of that what's on the plate of women across the state. So that's been a really interesting perspective, I think, talking to a couple of lawmakers who are single moms and bring their kids from Houston with them so that they can do this important job at the legislature, sort of how they make that work.
And a lot of people have talked about compromise, about seeing women lawmakers have this ability to bring people together in a unique way. So that's been something that almost everyone actually has talked about. It's been really interesting.
We'll have to talk with Phil Prazen about doing What He Said, right?
Have at it.
One more guess.
Yeah.
So how can people experience What She Said?
We are live on Facebook every week. Usually we do it on Monday mornings, sometimes on Tuesdays. But check on our Texas Politics Facebook page. We'll let you know when it's coming up.
Great. Thank you both for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for State of Texas. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.